Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be recapping Playdays number 3 and 4, so basically the latter half of this portion of stage number 1 of NAL 2023. So 2 teams eliminated, and you probably know who they are, Parabellum and Mirage. We'll look at the standings at the end and discuss it probably a little bit more. Until then, we have 14 matches to talk about just like last time, so let's try to speed through these as best as I can. Okay, first game of the day, Beast Coast versus Parabellum, 7-1 victory for Beast Coast on Cafe. I guess, they're pretty good on Cafe, and this is going to tee them up for another Cafe game coming up in a little while that we'll maybe discuss. I don't think people really expected Parabellum to get beaten this badly, but I do think that Beast Coast was the expected victor of this match. And looking at the stats, yeah, Hat really popping off, as well as Vertical and Doc, and even Mr. B and Hyper with positive ratings. Good to see everybody doing well in a dominant victory like this. And then on the other hand, the lowest rated player for Beast Coast has the same rating as the highest rated player on Parabellum. Everyone getting pretty well smoked, except for, I guess, Spiker. But yeah, just not a very competitive match. Moving on to the second one, we have M80 versus Sonics is a 7-4 victory for M80 on Chalet. And I think a pretty good map for each of them. Sonics probably felt pretty good about it there. It's generally a map that they're good on. It's a pretty frag heavy map, and if Sonic should be good at anything, it is fragging. But same sort of thing for M80, where, they have some of the most prolific fraggers in the world on their team, bringing in Iconic and Spoit recently, and it's actually the 2 of them popping off the most in this match, with Diaz and Gomez putting up slightly more modest but still impressive performances, than only Kino really lagging behind. And then on the other hand, similar sort of thing, the bottom rated player here is about the same rating as the highest rated player here. Citizen, top rated on his team, but still hasn't gone positive. I'll just tell you now, if you didn't know, Achieved and Citizen do each end up going positive. Achieved in his second to last match, and Citizen, I think it is last match, or maybe also his second last, we'll see it. But yeah, they only each went positive once, I think. So pretty unfortunate, and I think it's a bit more slanderous on Citizen, because it's traditionally harder to fit into the Dark Zero system, and then Citizen was also imported from another region. He was just thought of as this amazing fragger who maybe just had some recent struggles before he joined Sonics, and now, still sort of struggling on Sonics, but at least he's the top-rated player here. Third game, we have 7-4 win for Oxygen on Border over Mirage, and yeah, Mirage, and it was a completely different roster, but they were really good on Border. They got a few upset wins, and now they go here again. But no, Oxygen really solid on Border as well. They went here a few times this stage, and it worked out for them pretty well overall. Newer's really doing well, and kind of carrying his team, honestly. Like, it's not like all of his teammates did badly, but he did way better than everyone else. And the entry stats, you do notice, are pretty split. Well, no, I guess not even that split. They're pretty heavily in favor of Mirage. They went +3 overall over the course of only 11 rounds. So good on them there, but they weren't able to win the rounds. I think a decent showing by Mirage in this game and this stage overall. They let a few things slip, most especially the game versus SSG, and we'll talk about what that could have meant for them at the end when we do examine the standings, if I hopefully I remember to talk about it. But like, even in this game, there were a few rounds that came down to the wire, like they could have won instead of Oxygen. Maybe it could have been an overtime game, and so on and so forth. So even though they did lose, but they win. Yeah, they only won defense rounds, and then Oxygen, when I think Mirage was on defense, they went up 4-2, and then Oxygen won like 5 in a row when they went on defense. So, maybe just need to work on one of the sides, but I think Mirage is pretty close to, well, certainly they were contending, right? They're close to being a real contender. Okay, Space Station versus M80, 7-3 victory for Space Station on Oregon. I think this one was a little bit of a surprise. I did predict Space Station here, and I think in my predictions I got 5. I think I got 5 out of the 7. So overall, I believe I got 18 out of the 28 games, which I think is pretty good. It's pretty solid percentage. I think there were quite a few like freebies. If you picked against Parabellum every time, you got all of them except for one right in that regard. If you picked against Mirage, you got most of those right. Like, there were some freebies for sure. Beast Coast did cause some upsets, but they ended up playing like Parabellum and Mirage at the end, so that made predicting that easier. Anyways, yeah, Space Station do take the win in this game, and they didn't really break much of a sweat. Merc not doing too well, but everyone else kind of really cooking on Space Station, and then on the other hand, only Iconic really putting up that much of a fight. Everyone else pretty far in the red. And yeah, that looked to be one of the games of the day, and I liked watching it because Space Station were playing like maniacs, and it was working out. I really like watching these guys play. It's a lot of fun. But who knows if it'll continue to be consistent or if people will adapt to it. We have on Border Sonics taking down Dark Zero 8-6. This should have been a Dark Zero win. This is sort of similar to what happened where Dark Zero should have lost. I think it was M80 when they played on Bank when NJR got that clutch. Gaveni was in a 1v2 that he had the bomb planted, he was on attack, and he had the angle to shoot who was the person who was defusing at his pistol out, but he just didn't hit the shots, so he lost the round. Like he was in a 1v2, but he should have won it, and that was in regulation. Yeah, Dark Zero probably should have won in regulation, but no, unfortunately that didn't happen. Rexon with big 17 kills, and Grixer and Gunner also putting up quite a few frags, and I mean, it looks like this was a much less close game. I mean, Citizen Geo kind of doing badly, but we have 3 pretty positive players on Sonics, and then nobody doing that well on Dark Zero, but it was, still, of course, a Sonics win, but 8-6, so Sonics, I think, were pretty dominant in a lot of the rounds that they won. But again, they probably shouldn't have won this game, and at the end of the day, I guess Dark Zero ended up first anyway, so it didn't matter too much, but I think this probably bumped Sonics up a little bit. We can look at that also. Okay, Mirage beat Beast Coast 7-5 on Chalet. I think I must have got this one wrong, but I wasn't super surprised. I think people were, especially at various points throughout the stage, they were, I don't know, they were doubting Mirage a little bit too much. I didn't think it was unreasonable for them to win this. I thought, Beast Coast, I predicted Beast Coast, of course, so I thought they were going to win, but I wasn't surprised when I saw that Mirage won. I thought that they were a team that definitely gave them a little bit more time, because even though Beast Coast and Parabellum, very new teams, they had at least a little bit of structure, and technically Mirage did, right? They had Kansan and Yeti who played together, but not most recently, because Yeti was just on Space Station where he just played with Rampy. So there's a few things there, but the Mr. B system sort of sets up Beast Coast, and then Skies and Laxing have played together a bunch, so that sort of sets up Parabellum. I think a little bit more than for Mirage. There was a little bit more of a hodgepodge, but yeah, given enough time, they were at least able to take down Beast Coast, but not enough to make top 6. Yeah, Vertical doing well here, as well as Mr. B, but Hat, Doc, and Hyper not so much, and Yeti, DB Fire, and Rampy, the real big performers for Mirage in this game. So next game we have 7-0. I think is this the last game for day 3? I want to say this is the first 7-0 of the stage, but not the last one. We'll see, and we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, I mean, I guess just do not trifle with Dark Zero on Cafe, and Chief still doesn't go positive. He goes even, but he doesn't go positive in a 7-0. And I mean, depending on how things are working, that could often be the case. I don't know about often. If this happened 100 times, I don't know if I'd say that somebody on the team would go even 99 out of 100 times or anything like that. But yeah, everyone getting smoked. Merc getting 1 kill. J9 and Forest only 3. I mean, not much to say here. It was absolute destruction. There were several close rounds, like Space Station could have got on the board, but Dark Zero, I mean, clearly they were destroying. They only lost 1 entry engagement to boot. Okay, so I believe this is now first game of the final day, Playday number 4. Clubhouse, 7-2 victory for Sonics. Traditionally a pretty good map for each of these teams, and I mean, I don't know, I didn't compare the stats or anything, but yeah, Sonics, they ended up taking down Oxygen, and a really pitiful day for Oxygen. You'll see in the other game is actually the other 7-0. They get 7-0'd. So they go 2-14 on round count in the day. They could have easily locked in top 2, probably even top 1 if they did well in 1 or both of their games, but no, they get absolutely smoked. And they have to play Sonics and SSG, last 2 teams, definitely not pushovers by any means, obviously. And I feel like this happened, did this happen before in one of the stages where Oxygen was like pretty far ahead or something, and then they got smoked in their last game or something, and so they got passed by some I swear something like that happened in one of the more recent stages. Foxay putting up a bit of a fight, but nobody else too much, and Gunner, the real big performer, along with Grixer on Sonics. All right, next game we have Mirage taking down Parabellum 7-2. So yeah, Parabellum getting mopped once again. Unfortunate for them. They got mopped by Beast Coast. They got mopped by Mirage. Some of the other like bottom teams, I guess you'd say. Beast Coast ending up 5th place and not 6th place like you might have expected. But yeah, they got kind of mopped more badly by even the lower teams than the upper teams, which is curious. I don't know. Maybe they were just more prepared for the other teams because they're more established. I don't know. Tough to say why that happened. Maybe they were just getting discouraged because they were, their odds of making it were already pretty poor. But Mirage definitely needed this win, and then they sort of needed their next game win, I think. I'm sort of blanking. There's so many games that it's sort of hard to keep track of where everything was at any given point. But people voted for Parabellum over Mirage, but I don't know if that's just org support. People might not be big fans of the org Mirage. Fish had a pretty good stage, well, relatively speaking. As for when it comes to his entry stats, at least, and we'll see that he was actually the top entry player, went 15-5. Pretty impressive stuff numerically, but I think he still had a negative rating and I think maybe a negative KD. And I think the lowest survival rate, which is also reflected in this game. 0% survival rate is funny, given that he's the highest rated player on his team by far. Surf, Cans, and DP Fire are really popping off. So I think different players from before, at least one of them obviously overlapping, but we get to see a really good performance out of Surf. I don't think we saw too many of those this stage, with him being moved to that real hard support, that breach and smoke role. And next up we have Dark Zero versus Beast Coast. So I mentioned that Beast Coast had a good game on Cafe. That was the 7-1, I think, over Parabellum, right? But Dark Zero coming off a 7-0 over Space Station. So one, you're 7-1ing Parabellum, the worst team, and then Space Station, one of the best teams, getting 7-0'd. I don't know, like, I didn't really examine how these teams' map pools lined up or anything, but it just didn't seem like the map you'd want to face Dark Zero on, and I don't know, maybe they just saw some things that they were feeling good about, Beast Coast that is, because again, some of the rounds against SSG were close, even though the game was not close, but no, it ends up being a pretty heavily favored Dark Zero match with that 7-3 scoreline finally achieved, goes positive, and is, in fact, the top-rated player on his team. I had him in my fantasy draft because he was, well, I thought he would bounce back a little bit more. He was the cheapest player in the draft, and he does really bad in the next game, but I was feeling pretty good about my pick after this game, at least. NJR, Gavini, Pambazoo, and then even Canadian with the 1.0 rating, and then nobody going positive on Beast Coast. So real smoke show, as you can see here. 1-9 for Hyper. He was like 0-8 at one point, and at least he got his 1, right? And okay, we have Oxygen versus Space Station 7-0. So Space Station got 7-0'd next game, and I think it was the next day, so they had a little bit of time to bounce back. But their very next game, they get a 7-0 over the team that looked like the top team in the league, Oxygen. This is absolutely incredible. So I don't know, maybe just don't trifle with Space Station on Villa. And Forrest, he was a maniac in this game, played Blitz the most. And if I remember right, Forrest had like one, I think it was against TSM, an absolutely nuclear game, like 20-something kills. I think don't mess with Forrest on Villa, and I guess, J9 would have also been on his team. 2.25 rate, like look at oh my god. But then we have Fultz also going 3-3, just like Achieve did in the 7-0 against Space Station. So funny enough there, but no, still a very much positive rating for Fultz. Absolute destruction, biggest one of the stage. I don't know, is it bigger? Because it looks like Oxygen actually has more kills, but I swear the ratings are higher here than they were on Dark Zero, because it was like, what, they only get like 11, didn't Space Station only get like 11 kills or something in 7 or out? Or, well, okay. So now that I think about it, maybe the rounds were not as close. Maybe it was just a few rounds that were close. They must have got flawless like a bunch of times. Okay, so I hope I'm not misleading you. If I remember right, there were a few close rounds. There must have been at least 1 or 2, right? Surely, like a 2v2 or something. Anyways, we'll move on from that. I hope I didn't fumble the bag there. Sonics versus Mirage, and it was looking like kind of a close game early on. I think Mirage got the very first round, and then Sonics, well, they went 4-1 1.5 from there. Ended up 2-4 on their attacking half, so really solid, and then they go on to just lose one more round, and they win 7-3. So pretty handy victory. Rexon, Geo, and Citizen, the big performers there. And then, so finally, yeah, Citizen going positive, even double positive. Good for him. They bought out Citizen from Europe just so he could beat Mirage. Good showing. I'm not really a Citizen hater, but yeah, I mean, obviously he's fallen off the face of the earth in terms of his performance from what he used to be. Maybe he'll bounce back. We'll see. Anyways, Rampy, the only one putting up much of a fight here, and then we're getting close to the end. But we're not quite there yet. Theme Park, first Theme Park game of the stage. So I mean, I don't really have much analysis for you there. We'll see one more. It's actually the very last game. 7-3 win for Beast Coast. So M80, they were a lot shakier than people expected. They end up 6th place below Beast Coast on the standings. That's not something that people were expecting. And I was sort of saying, and this was just sort of speculative, but I was saying that M80, Oxygen, and Sonics look like the big 3. And at the end of it, I think, so M80 6th place, Sonics 3rd, Oxygen 4th, I believe, or maybe those 2 are switched, but none of those 3 actually placed top 2. Which is definitely where you wanted to be. 2nd place much better than 3rd place, and just like 6th place much better than 7th place. But yeah, a bit peculiar. Beast Coast, just they're not to be trifled with. Hat looking like one of the best players in the league. We'll see what he can do in the playoffs, and if they make it to the major, things like this. But yeah, definitely one of the most impressive players. We'll look at the overall stats in a little bit here. Diaz doing fine. Gomez and Kino really struggling, the 2 bottom performers for the team in this game and in the stage overall. And Vertical, also a good game. Mr. B, Doc, Hyper, not so much, but it was still, again, a dominant 7-3 victory with a very defender-sided game, as you'd expect from Theme Park. 7 of the 10 rounds going to the defenders. And now we have the last game. So the last 2 games of the stage were Theme Park, right? And 8-7 victory, but this was a massive comeback. I think Parabellum were up like 6-3, I want to say. They probably should have won this, but it didn't really matter. Dark Zero, if they won this game, they got first place. If they lost, yeah, and I think if they lost this, they didn't get first place. So if they lost in regulation, I think they got 3rd, and if they lost in overtime, I think they got 2nd. We'll look at the standings, and I can double check. And I think if they won in overtime, which they did, or in regulation, they would have got first place. Which makes sense. Okay, yeah. But a massive comeback achievement, 2-11. I was watching this game and I didn't know exactly how close the fantasy thing was, and I was sweating. Like, Achieve got a few kills and then they rehost, and then he was like 0-8 or something. I was like, oh my god, please. And he went 0-5 on entry. Oh, Achieved. Achieved. Yes. Anyways, Pamazoo, Gavini, NJR, the big 3 performance for the team in this game and overall, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when we look at the overall stats. I'm gonna liken it to something else, and then Spiff with a good showing, I guess, 10-10, but high rating because he had a high cost mostly. And that does it for the games for the stage. So again, yeah, I'm going to move over, look at the stats in a second, and then we'll look at the standings, and I guess we'll call it a day from there. So here we have the overall stats, and I'm going to try to not spend an absolute ton of time here, but probably a little bit more than I like, as I tend to do. NJR, the top performer by a pretty significant margin. J90 and Gavini a little bit behind, Grixer, Pambazoo. I think the biggest standout here is definitely Hat, like the most unexpected, all the players I just mentioned, and then Diaz, Newers, Iconics Boy. These are all players that you'd see in the top 5 or top 10 rating, but Hat, I don't think anybody saw this coming. He had one of the highest kill counts in the league. It's 74, outdone only by NJR, it looks like. And I mean, in terms of KPR, he had the 2nd highest. NJR played, fewer rounds, or probably a similar number of rounds. He had more kills than Hat, whatever. And then in terms of like the supports, Dream and Canadian were the really big planters. So Canadian really has gone back to that hard support, at least on attack. He started doing his own thing on defense, playing Solus, gathering intel and whatnot. And Mr. B, Kino, these are the main sports. Geo, Hot and Cold. Makes a lot of sense seeing these players. And I'm a little bit surprised to see Laxing planting more than Skies. I don't know if I wasn't paying that much attention. I don't know if Laxing was actually carrying the bond that much. I would think it would be Skies, given he's the breach player, but that doesn't necessarily imply that. But mostly what I want to look at here is, was there anything else? Oh, I did mention, yeah, Fish goes +10, but NJR tops 3 of these stats. Grixer with 4 clutches, Mr. B also with 4 clutches, showing their balls of steel there. And you'll notice a lot of Dark Zero, Pambazoo, NJR, and Gavini in the top 5 for a lot of these categories, including, Gavini here, and then Canadian even makes it here. So everyone except for Achieves getting their flowers on DZ. Anyways, I just want to group the players by teams, and we'll take a quick look. Yeah, NJR, Gavini, Pambazoo, the real trident of Dark Zero. This is very reminiscent of TSM when they won SI last year, when they won 2022, I guess. Merc, Achieved, and Bolo were like fragging out, very high ratings, and then Chala and Geo were sort of struggling in terms of rating. They were the support backbone, playing the support roles, and now it's actually Achieved, not in the top 3, but instead in the bottom, but he's still on the team, so funny enough. I expect Achieved to bounce back. Like, this is a really bad stage. I just don't imagine he'll keep up this performance. Like, this is just way below his standards, but again, it's been a well-known thing that players generally struggle when they get onto DZ. I think Gavini a little bit of an exception. He did okay at SI, and then he's doing really well here. On Parabellum, yeah, Fish, best entry player in the league, but he goes +10 here, but he goes -5 on entry. Still the best rated player on his team. They were more tightly clustered last time we looked at it. Skies and Spiker fell off a little bit here. I did want to mention the entry stats because I talked about it last time. Things changed up a little bit because 6 of the 8 teams were all within like ±2, and then it was like Dark Zero was really good, Space Station was really bad, but Dark Zero incredible on entry. These two cancel out. They went +13, and then like Parabellum, well, they would be plus. They actually end up just going +1 overall, with Fish getting really canceled out by the other players. And I don't really want to read all of them off, but like M80 actually bounced back quite a lot. They're +8. And then I don't know, you can add them up yourself if you want, but I did want to go look at Space Station. They're 2nd place in the league. If Dark Zero had lost their very last round, they'd be 1st place in the league, but they went 9. They went -9. They're like one of the worst, if not just the worst team on entry, which is funny. I guess if they can shore that up, they'll be even more of a force to be reckoned with. So interesting stuff there. Anyways, let's just keep reading down the teams. On M80, yeah, it's Kino and Gomez, the two more struggling players, and I think that makes sense. Everybody knows how good Diaz is, and Iconic and Spoit were expected to come in and make a big splash. Kino was doing really well early on. It was him and Diaz at the top, but he really fell off. But what do you expect? He's a breach and smoke player, even though he usually puts up really good stats for those roles. You can't always expect somebody to put up the numbers. And then, yeah, we see Hat, one of the best players in the league, and by far the best player on Beast Coast. I guess Mr. B not that far behind. You went even, -1, but he has 8 plants. He has a bunch of clutches, big impact. But yeah, look at these stats on Hat, particularly the KD, not that impressive on entry. And I guess Beast Coast overall, not that good on entry. Well, they were really bad, actually. They went -9, I think. But Vertical shored things up. He ends up positive rating, even on kills, even on entry, so good for him. Hyper definitely much more on Fraud Watch than Vertical at this point. Doc, not amazing, but he's a little bit more time to grow, I think. Even though he has a little bit more experience than Had and Mr. B, he's still relatively new, especially compared to Vertical and Hyper. And then on Sonics, we have Grixter doing the most work. I think Gunner was like higher rated, and now him and Rexon sort of equalized, but Citizen still kind of struggling, and Geo, well, he's the hard breach, what are you gonna do? And then on Mirage, we have Kanzan, Rampy, DP Fire, all like around 1.0, and then Surf and Yeti sort of struggling. Probably Yeti is the one that needs to improve the most. He's sort of their entry player, I guess, at the moment, and he had the worst stats, but not by a massive margin. I think the whole team just maybe can coordinate and gel a little bit better in the future. Oxygen, they fell off the face of the earth, again, going 2-14 at the very end. And they were also really bad on, I think they were actually the worst team on entry. They go -9, which I think is that the same I said for Parabellum, but Newer's only going even, only Yaga going positive, everyone else going negative. Yeah, just weird stuff. And these stats really fell off because, again, you get 7-0 and you get 2 and you get 2-7 or 7-2 or whatever. Yeah, they just really fell off in the last day. Their stats would have looked a lot better. Sweater, still the worst rated player on the team. You have to imagine that trend will break at some point, but I don't know. Does Sweater just suck? I'm not saying he does, but do you guys think he does? And then finally, yeah, J90 doing really, really well. And then Merc sort of at the bottom. Not struggling super hard. I just still think that his entry record is pretty impressive. He's got to have the most, or like did somebody pass him? I thought, didn't like Spoit. Oh, Spoit has 28. Still not as many as Merc. Pambazoo had 33 to Merc's 31, right? Yeah, so we got passed up a little bit, but still getting into a lot of those entry engagements, winning a few more than he lost. Not the lowest survival rate in the league. It actually goes to Fish, but still. I expect Merc to shore things up. It makes sense. He's sort of the odd man out on this team, and Space Station looked really good, but I think also it was pretty clear the potential for them to look even better. Okay, so I think that'll do it for the stats. So one more thing to look at. We're going to go over to the final standings. All right, so here we have the standings. We have a few pretty close positions, first and second place on the same number of points. Dark Zero with the better round differential. They also had the head-to-head, but I think round differential is the main tiebreaker. Yeah, Dark Zero did 7-0 Space Station. So had this been a close game, like if it was a 7-5 or something, Space Station would have 5 more. They'd be ahead of Dark Zero. So if they didn't even need to get more points necessarily. So yeah, if Dark Zero had lost in overtime, yeah, they'd still be second place. If they lost in regulation, so they were at +10, they would have got at least -2. Yeah, they would have got third place. So okay, so if they lost in regulation, they got third. If they won, or they lost in overtime, they got second, and if they won at all, they got first, which then what ended up happening. So Space Station, if they just won one more round against Beast Coast, if they won in round 15 rather than losing, they would have got first place. If Dark Zero had lost in round 15 against Parabellum, Space Station would have got first place. Sonics, this is a really big surprise, then ending up here. They had a really bad start, but they bounced back pretty hard towards the end. Passing Oxygen, no small feat. They both end up going 4 and 3, but a much better round differential on Sonics. Like Oxygen 2 and 14 at the end obviously hurt them, but they go +0 at the end. Super funny. Same as M80 actually, but they have 2 more points. And then Beast Coast sneaking up above M80 by way of beating them, obviously. If it had been if they'd gone like overtime, I don't really want to do the math. I don't know. Somebody would be ahead of somebody. But anyways, Mirage, so it didn't end up mattering that Mirage lost to Space Station actually, but okay, if M80 had beat Beast Coast, they'd still only be on 8 points, and Mirage got 1 point against Space Station, but they should have got 3. They were up 6-3, so if they won, they could have won 7-3, 7-4, 7-5. If they won any of those rounds, and I guess not win in overtime. I guess win in overtime wouldn't have done it because Their round differential was pretty bad, right? So yeah, probably if they'd won one of those 3 rounds and also Beast Coast lost to M80 or lost somewhere else, then they would have made it. So, but it didn't end up biting them as much. You don't feel as bad. It's not just one what if, it's multiple what ifs. Parabellum, you know, they got finally a 4th point on the board, but only the 1 win against a really, I mean, I guess they were proven to be pretty inconsistent Oxygen. They looked really solid going in the last day, looking like the Parabellum win was just a real big fluke, but no, getting smoked at the very end, maybe poked a few holes in the public perception of Oxygen. But besides, I mean, I hope there's not too many things I alluded to before that I said I was going to talk about and I didn't, but I think that pretty well covers it. Sonics with a higher round differential than Space Station. So Sonics, yeah, had a few good games. I guess Space Station really was hurt by getting 7-0'd, but they also had a 7-0 to get all that round differential back. Anyways, oh, I guess we'll look at the, let's look at the bracket really quick. I don't know when they're playing this exactly. I don't think they put out the dates, but, and also it's it's really confusing. So there's 6 teams playing here. Only 3 are going to qualify for the major, but I think it's only this team that goes straight to phase 2. I think both of these teams, yeah, go to phase 1, but don't quote me on that because it's a really complex system. Maybe I'll study up a little bit and make a video, but I think that's what happened. Again, if anybody knows better, let me know below. I think the team that, you know, does not lose, that wins all the way through, goes to phase 2, and the other 2 that advance, they go to phase 1, and then the other 3 teams go to, I think it's the last chance qualifier, so that's like the closed qualifier basically, and then the other 2 teams from NA go to the open qualifier, but I think they get like an advanced seed maybe, so Parabellum and Mirage. So yeah, really a lot of complicated stuff, but okay, Sonics versus M80. This was M80 won this, right, on Chalet? So we'll see who wins the rematch there. Oxygen beat Beast Coast, and that was the very first game, I think, 7-3 on, was that board? I don't remember what map it was. And then so, I mean, obviously all of these are going to be rematches. Everyone just played everyone in the round robin. Space Station beat Sonics pretty narrowly. They beat M80 pretty handily. Dark Zero, yeah, they lost Oxygen pretty badly. It was 7-2. So Oxygen actually beat both these teams pretty well. So we'll see what happens here. If Space Station wins, then, you know, they got 7-0'd by Space Station. So they'll be looking for revenge. Anyways, maybe I'll do predictions for this later, but I just wanted to show the bracket at the very least. But okay, I think that's going to do it for me. Leave me a like, leave me a comment about anything in the whole wide world. Once again, if you say some real shenanigan stuff, I mean, I might have to delete your comment, but, you know, maybe if you're just a real weirdo, maybe I'll leave it and I just won't respond to it. But realistically, I'll probably respond to any comment that you leave. And, you know, subscription also would be very much appreciated. I think I have a pretty, you know, loyal, quote unquote, fan base, but there are definitely some people that watch the videos that are not subscribed. You're probably not watching to the end if you're not subscribed, but anyways, you know, if you're not subscribed, feel free to do that. I like seeing the number goes up, makes me feel good, so on and so forth. And with all that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.